sure, thinks happy thoughts or positive thoughts as opposed to negative thoughts. But ultimately, happiness isn't a state of mind. It's not a state of mood. It's a state of being.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Thrive State Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kien, aka Dr. V, triple board certified MD and performance and longevity expert. And I am so pumped, so super pumped and excited about this episode because it's on a topic that's just so important. And it's something that I would love to master. The topic is happiness, how to hack happiness, how to obtain this one thing that is actually within us all to have. It's really our birthright. When I look at my 15-month-old daughter and she's just cruising around, unless she's hungry, unless she's hurt, she's usually happy. And it just reminds us, when I take a look at children who are loved, this is one of the things that is very innate within all of us. You know, happiness is such an important topic as it pertains to performance and longevity as well. And we look at happy people actually preserve their telomeres more, which means that happy people live longer. Happy people are also healthier. You know, the emotion of happiness and maybe the associated emotions of gratitude, love, mirth, joy, laughter, all those are actually anti-aging hormones, and it'll add years to life. All those hormones actually bring down the inflammatory response. And then let's look at happiness in the workplace. The people who are happier also are more productive at work. They'll make more sales. They'll, on average, have a higher salary. What about happiness in relationships? Happy people stay married longer. They tend to be in positive, nurturing relationships. And if you read my book, Thrive State, you know that those are one of the keys to getting into Thrive State. So happiness is just such an important topic. And with the pandemic and everything going on in the world right now, it looks like over the past decade, happiness has actually been on the decline, and there's been more anxiety and more depression. Well, why is that? We'll explore that topic, and not only explore the topic as to maybe why people aren't as happy as they could potentially be, but how to start to cultivate that again. Again, how do we cultivate that childlike, sense of joy that I know my daughter has, and if we take a look around the world, all the children of the world have as well. How do we cultivate that? You're going to find out more in this podcast. You'll find out that there are little things that you can do to activate your happiness, but even underneath everything, happiness is not a doing, it's not a having, but it's really a being. And if you get that, you've got the goal, you've got the stuff that will improve your relationships, your performance at work, your business, and yes, your health. And I have none other than happiness coach Rob Mack to share this information with you. Rob is actually an Ivy League educated positive psychology expert. He's a celebrity happiness coach. He's an executive coach and a best-selling author. Rob had actually studied under the father of positive psychology, Martin Seligman. And he is one of the world's leading experts on the relationship between happiness and success. He actually helps individuals and organizations achieve authentic personal happiness and effortless professional success based on time-tested, face-valid, empirical data and timeless transcendental wisdom. You're going to love him. He is certainly happy. He is glowing. He is such a beautiful soul. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Rob Mack. There he is. Hey. How are you, brother?
I'm fantastic. How you doing, my man?
Man, I love the energy. I'm doing fantastic, even more fantastic. Now, I get to be sitting across the IG waves with you, brother.
Oh, man, I know. It's great when a plan comes together, isn't it?
It is. And I love that 18 reference. You jumped on early. That's super awesome. I love the early people because they always catch the worm. Yeah. And I got to say, Rob, I am just really amazed. The more I kind of dive into your life and everything you've been across, everything you've done, I've noticed a lot of similarities, a lot of Access Hollywood segments we've done together. We both followed podcasts with Sonny. And then when I looked at your book, the front cover of your book has a quote from one of my coaches, Lisa Nichols. We're connected that way too.
Love Lisa. I'm not surprised at all. there was just something about you from the very jump that I always felt, you feel a resonance with people and you just can't manufacture that. I didn't know, I wasn't aware of all those parallels, but I love it. And big fan of Lisa Nichols. I met Lisa Nichols at a runway show, actually, and she was just the most gracious, generous person ever. So I'm so much gratitude for her.
Yeah, and her frequency is amazing, and your frequency is amazing. That's why I think we were first connected, because we were both featured in an article as it pertains to giving back.
Yeah, I will say, and I don't know about you, I've struggled with that in my life sometimes. When I was young, I was always trying to just be a good person and, I don't know, donate time and money and energy. But it came from a place that was like an attempt to sort of get. You get in that place where you're like, you think you're doing something really altruistic, but sometimes you're really just trying to get something back, which is like either a feeling of like being like moral or ethical, or maybe you want love or appreciation.
Yeah.
So it's nice to give from a heart and from a place of overflow instead.
Yes. But all that is coming from a place where you already feel full. I mean, I used to do that all the time. I felt like I was giving, but there was almost kind of like an obligation. I should be giving, right?
It's like quid pro quo. You got these strings attached, and sometimes you're not even aware of it. And so it's a little secret sort of manipulation tactic that sometimes you can fall victim to. So I try to stay clean of that. I have this expression I like, you probably will appreciate, you probably have a better one, but it was like, it's just no expectations, only appreciation. I just try to remind myself of that, just when I'm either coming from a place where I want to give or where I'm just connecting with people. So just no expectations, only appreciation,
Oh yeah, trade your expectations for appreciation. I love that. Let's get right to it. I want to be cognizant of time, but Rob, Mack, welcome to the Thrive State Podcast, brother.
Thanks so much for having me, man. I feel so...
Well, we start off the show with something we call the 5 to Thrive. It's actually a mini game show played by you and me, and if you win the 5 to Thrive, you get a healthy dinner on me in Los Angeles, and I know we're in the same city. So let me ask you, brother, are you ready to play the 5 to Thrive?
I'm ready, I think.
All right. Now, each answer is going to be less than a minute long. It's just really, really quick answers so that we get to know you a little bit better, get to lubricate the conversation, even though I'm thinking we're pretty lubricated already. Question number 1, are you ready?
Yes.
What book would you recommend for anyone who's starting on their happiness journey?
Oh, man, it's happiness from the inside out. You got to recommend your own book. Look, and I've always been terrible about that because my mom... I'd go on podcasts, go on TV shows, and I would always talk about other people's books. But I have to say, there was an entire team involved in that book. So I would genuinely say Happiness from the Inside Out. I would also, there's so many other books. The How of Happiness is just a phenomenal book. I think that's one of the best books out there as well.
Amazing. 1,000 points there. Question number 2 is, what was your favorite childhood memory?
Oh, my goodness. I would say my favorite childhood memory is probably playing basketball. I was obsessed with basketball. I wanted to be a professional basketball player. And I just remember going to the gym, to the YMCA, like every single time they had an open gym just to practice. So my favorite memories are probably of playing basketball.
Playing basketball. Awesome. 2,000 points. Question number 3. If you had to choose a technology, an app, as it pertains to increasing happiness in someone's life, what would you say that is?
Oh, man, that's a tough one. I would say that for me, it's probably Kindle, the Kindle app, just because you can read about how to become happier and more peaceful and more loving. And so the Insight Timer is great. So is the Calm app. Any app that helps you to either learn more about happiness or quiet the mind.
Awesome. Question number 4, and I personally really want to know this, is like, man, you are styling. I love your style. Every time you're on Access, every time you're doing your own TV show, you've got an awesome wardrobe. Is that all you, or do you have a stylist?
I so appreciate that, and I received that. I've received that. I've had to work on receiving things. Thank you so much for saying that, brother, especially from you, because you're always well-dressed. You always look fantastic. You're a great-looking guy, so it comes easy, I'm sure. But for me, I had a friend. I worked in entertainment business exclusively for like 10 years before I opened my private practice. And she was a stylist. She's a celebrity stylist, Melanie Whittle. And she's been so great about helping me to put together like a signature style. And then I riffed off that. So, years ago, she helped me with it. And then since then, I've just been riffing on my own. Sometimes I get it right. Sometimes I get it wrong. But it's a ton of fun, just to play with fashion.
Wow, amazing. I don't think I've seen a wrong picture of you yet. And my team actually created a photo of you without your shirt on. I'm like, yeah, there's tons of other photos. That was awesome.
That's
Last
awesome.
question. You're totally killing this. Last question is, how would you like to be remembered, Rob Mack?
Oh man, I think it's not so important to me that I'm remembered at all, quite frankly, but I would love people to remember happiness and how important it is to access the inherent, innate, and intrinsic happiness that is within them at all times. So, I'm not so interested and concerned at all about how I'm remembered. I just want people to be happy. And if something about what I say or what I am or what I do helps them to live a happier life, then that's plenty for me.
That's amazing. And 5,000 points. You have won the game. So whenever you're available, I would love to get together in person with you and share a meal with you or a beverage. It would be awesome.
I'm so down. I'm so down.
So first thing, that last answer was perfect, was finding happiness within. So let's go over just some benefits, because having happiness, some people would think, okay, well, it's just a feeling. But, if we really wanted to let people know what happiness can actually do for you, we know that happiness, has big implications as it pertains to your health, your relationships, your business, your ability to succeed. What are some of these things that happiness can bring for people?
Yeah, such a great question. My favorite question, probably. So happiness is the greatest success. It's the reason we want success, right? It's the greatest wisdom. It's the reason we want wisdom. It's the greatest love. It's the reason we want love. So that's the first thing I'll say, is that no matter what you want, you really want happiness. You really want this feeling that we'll call happiness, that is really a deep sense of contentment and fulfillment or peaceful aliveness. Now, that being said, you're right. There's lots of empirical data that has found that when you get happy or become happier, you become effortlessly more successful in all areas of your life, right? So happy people live 6 to 7 years longer, sometimes as many as 11 years longer or more than their unhappy counterparts. They get married earlier, stay married longer, are happier in all the relationships, whether they're married or not, because it doesn't have to do with marriage, it has to do with love and happiness. Happy people also make more money than their unhappy peers. So they make about $600,000 to $700,000 more on average over the course of their entire lifetime. Happy people experience less job burnout, right? They're also healthier while they live longer, right? They're rated as more attractive. So that's pretty interesting, right? But happy people, based on a Duchenne smile, which is an authentic smile that you cannot fake, are rated and judged as more attractive. So I often joke and say happiness is attractive, both literally and figuratively, because it makes your life better in practically every way imaginable. And then, of course, it also is very, helpful in the dating scene. But I would say, in all ways, really, happiness is really a master key and a cheat code to getting everything and anything else you want in your life. Happy people also are more charitable. They're kinder. They're more generous. They donate more time, money, energy, resources, and blood. Happiness is really not just a gift that we offer up to ourselves, but it's a gift that we offer up to the world.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And I hope many people didn't need to be convinced of how important happiness is. But I mean, Rob, thank you for sharing, that really it is that cheat code that you could bring to every single area of your life to improve that. So let me ask you this question. Can you share some statistics to, the amount of people that might not be happy these days? It seems very staggering, the increasing suicide rates, the bouts of anxiety and depression people have. And why do you think, as our society seems to be getting better in many different ways, more jobs, more access to health and food and things like that, why are people getting less happier these days?
Yeah, it's such a great question. There's a really interesting book I read about 20 years ago that's just as relevant, if not more relevant now than ever. It was called The Progress Paradox by George Easterbrook. And basically the finding was that between 1950 and about 2000, we were living a life that was practically unimaginable based on our grandparents' lives or even our parents' lives. So most people were living the American dream and more than that. And so because we were living these longer, healthier lives, the expectation was that we would also be living these happier lives. But that actually wasn't a discovery at all. What they found was that despite technological advancements that let people live a longer life, even a higher quality of life, sometimes even a healthier, much healthier life, people were actually feeling less happy as a result of it. So objectively, they were doing better. Subjectively, on the inside, they felt worse for it, according to the Progress Paradox. So we had 10 times the level of unipolar and bipolar depression that we had ever had, at least since 1950. We had about 10 times the level of depression. We had more anxiety, more stress and anxiety, more sort of axis 1 and axis 2 disorders. We had the average age for the first bout of depression was about 29 and a half years of age in about 1950. In about 2000 or so, it was 13 and a half years of age. So you had 13-year-olds that were not only seriously depressed and clinically depressed, but they were also, experiencing suicidal ideation. And lots of them were actually attempting and committing suicide, right? So that was 2000. That's 20 years since then. And so things have just kind of continued to get worse in lots of ways with the pandemic and all. Part of the challenge is if you're going in the wrong direction, increasing your speed will not help, right? So, increasing the momentum will not help. And I would say that these days we're probably as distracted as we've ever been. Yeah. We probably struggle as much as we ever have to feel truly and genuinely connected to other people, to ourselves. We experience a lot of cognitive overload. I'd say that most of us are emotionally dysregulated. We don't have great self-soothing skills. We don't have good coping skills. And we've never been taught any of these things. And we're certainly not incentivized or rewarded or encouraged to teach ourselves or to learn these things, right? So for various reasons. Then you got social media, and that plays into it, which works kind of like a magnifying glass. So it's all there, like the perfect storm, really. And I'll back up just for a moment and I'll be brief. But in addition to some of the ways in which sort of nurture has not necessarily nurtured or cultivated a level of happiness that most of us probably desire, we also have a brain, beautiful brain, that is mostly a fantastic problem solver, but it's also an incredible troublemaker, right? So it's wired, our brain is literally wired for negativity bias and confirmation bias and a number of other biases that make survival much more likely, but happiness much less likely in lots of ways. Now, of course, if you survive, the chances of you being happy go up. But, we've got a both sort of nature piece and a nurture piece that plays into it. So I'll say all that to say 50% of our happiness is attributable to genetics alone, to DNA alone. But that 50%, unlike, let's say, height or even eye color, is perfectly malleable. It's plastic. It's changeable. So that means you can change all that. You can improve your happiness level, whatever level you were born with, despite how low you may have been wired for it originally.
And that's what we really want to get into a little bit later on. But just to let everybody, in on your story a little bit and how you became a happiness expert, you weren't necessarily somebody who was happy your entire life, born happy, and there you were. It was something that you really worked on. I'm sure you actually dealt with unhappiness for a really, really long time. Can you tell us about that story?
Oh, absolutely, man. I'm like the poster boy for unhappiness. I mean, for depression and suicidal ideation, all the things, I'm the least likely person really to be a happiness coach and to be a positive psychology expert in some ways. I remember being deeply unhappy, self-loathing, self-hating, stressed out, anxious, and deeply dysphoric at the age of like 6 or 7. My first memories in life are just of drowning in sadness and depression. I always thought I'd grow out of it. You think, I'll eventually become a professional basketball player. That was my dream. Maybe I'll, get into a relationship, and maybe I'll have some friends, maybe I'll make some money, and things will change. So despite doing well academically and did well athletically, I was salutatorian in my school class, and I played all the sports. I didn't become a professional basketball player. I went on to get a consulting job. Lots of great things happened. I made a lot of money, and I had some friends even along the way. I just continued to feel worse and worse on the inside. And it got so bad that I decided I was going to do something about it. I was going to kill myself. So, I went to the kitchen. I did some research first, and I decided I was going to slash my wrist. So, I went to the kitchen. I got a kitchen knife and a steak knife, and I dug into my wrist. And when I say that something very surprising and unexpected happened, that is an understatement. Because when I dug that knife in, the last thing I expected, which happened, was that without anything in my external conditions or circumstances changing, I had a pretty good life outside.
Right.
I felt a level of peace and a sense of well-being and a kind of inexplicable joy and even love that I had never experienced before in that way. And so at the time I put off the suicide for it was like 10 minutes, man. It was like, that was even a tall.
We'll just wait 1 second.
Yes, exactly. But in that 10 minutes, I started doing a little bit research, a different kind of research. And my life very, very, very slowly began to change and shift in a more positive direction. But it's been decades. And, I'm here now talking to you, thank God. And I'm so grateful for this opportunity to share that story. And I appreciate you asking about it. But yeah, I'm the least likely person probably to be a happiness coach. And that being said, if I can become happy or happier, anyone can.
That's a beautiful story. And that's what I appreciate too. I mean, it's the people that have actually come out from the depths of their lowest low to be able to work on whatever that thing is that is now the gift in their life. So if you happen to be struggling, recognize that your struggle and your overcome of that struggle could be a gift to somebody else. And thank you, Rob Mack, for sharing this gift with so many people now. Let me ask just this question. You said you started this unhappiness feeling at the age of 6. And we know so many people in their teenage years or very early on tend to be unhappy. And I wonder why you think that's the case. I mean, I have a 14-month-old daughter now who's generally happy unless, you don't give her what she wants. But in general, I would say, and I think I've heard you say that happiness is actually our natural state. So how do we deviate from that natural state? Part of it is it maybe trying to conform to a society that might not be very accepting of this natural state and of who we are.
Oh, beautifully said. I mean, gosh, I just love conversation with you. I mean, that's really poignant and profound. And yeah, you're absolutely right about it. I'd say that it's true to be well adjusted to a sick society just makes you sick. It does not make you well adjusted. So there's that piece. I would say that also, I was an empath, still an empath. It's like I would feel other people's emotions and I would sort of misattribute them to myself. I was like, I'm feeling this stress and anxiety, and I would just absorb it all. So that was a huge piece for me. And I had to kind of begin to discern and see through that a little. Also, I'm a thinker. I like to overanalyze. I overthink. It's great for school. It can be great for business. It's terrible for your personal life. It's terrible for, subjective well-being. It's terrible for happiness and peace and even self-love. So, and then I was a perfectionist, that also struggled with that. Nothing was quite ever good enough. And I think that too, beyond that, I think a lot of times sort of unhappiness and sadness and even depression gets a bad rap, particularly here in the West, and there's an opportunity, and you see this sometimes more in the East, that when somebody's struggling with depression, there's an opportunity there that doesn't exist otherwise. And that opportunity is to kind of realize and recognize that divine discontent is pointing you in a better direction, in a direction that will make you happier in some way or the other. And it might be circumstantial, so there might be some things in your life you can change, but it also is, I think, providing a lesson or maybe a reminder about what truly life is for and about, and where true happiness genuinely comes from. And I think we're often mistaken about that. So I consider it a great gift, but it didn't come easy.
This episode of the Thrive State podcast is brought to you by the Thrive State Accelerator. The Thrive State Accelerator is actually a home course that I developed using the exact same techniques I work with my celebrity clients, CEOs, and executives on how to get them to the Thrive State. The Thrive State Accelerator teaches you how to master your 7 bioenergetic elements. That's sleep, nutrition, movement, stress and emotional mastery, relationships, our thoughts and mindset, as well as purpose. In this Thrive State Accelerator, you're also going to get a bonus module on optimization. That's how I talk about supplementation, peptides, all the optimization techniques I use with my clients to get them to the Thrive State. Now, for some of you who are just joining us for the first time, you guys might be wondering, what is the Thrive State? Well, the Thrive State is actually the energy, the epigenetic environment we give to ourselves, telling our DNA how to act and how to respond. And if we want optimal health, longevity, and peak performance, if we can master these 7 bioenergetic elements, our ability to have those 3 things that we just said, optimal health, longevity, and peak performance, is at its greatest. And it also prevents you from getting chronic symptoms like brain fog, being overweight, feeling sluggish, acne, pain, all these chronic symptoms, as well as preventing you from getting chronic disease. So getting to that Thrive State is really getting to that state to master being that very best version of yourself, so you could show up for you, for your family, for your business, everything that's important to you. So go ahead, check it out right now at kienvu.com/accelerator and use coupon code podcast25 for 25% off. Now back to the podcast. Yeah. So I tell people all the time, the challenge is oftentimes, your gift. 5-6 years ago, I was overweight. I was diabetic. I had high blood pressure. I was on prescription meds, and I'm a medical doctor. I'm supposed to know otherwise. But it was really doing the deep work in trying to uncover why I was unwell that I now have a story to share with other people, to let people know that really they can access optimal health if they were just to become the very best versions of themselves. And so I ask you this question is, what would you say to somebody who is sitting in maybe some yuckiness, to let them understand that maybe that yuckiness is their gift right now, for them to be able to see past the other side?
Yeah, I just want to, one second, I got to put a pin in that just because I have to say, my goodness, this is incredible to see you sitting here. It's like you just stepped out of the GQ catalog somewhere. And I didn't know that you had that past and you had that history and those challenges. That's incredible. So appreciate you sharing that. That's so inspiring. So thank you for that, Dr. Kien. Yeah, I would say that, look, it's hard when you're going through tough times, any kind of adversity or struggle or challenge. Lots of people say lots of things, and it's so easy, everybody's the optimist the first 4 hours of a diet kind of thing, right? So when you're not going through something, it's easy to have all the right platitudes and cliches. But when you're going through it, it's really, really difficult. But I will say that you can't have a rags to riches story without first having experienced rags. You can't have a happily ever after story if you haven't really been through some serious adversity and challenge and unhappiness and sadness and depression. And we all go through things. There's not a person in this planet, in this world, that hasn't been through some tough stuff. That's the first thing. And also, it's interesting because most of us, we hear a lot about post-traumatic stress disorder, right? For good reason. And interestingly enough, a much more likely outcome from even the most challenging or disruptive forms of adversity or even trauma is actually post-traumatic growth. Most people grow from adversity and even trauma and challenges. And they grow even when they don't want to grow, even when they think they can't grow, even when they aren't particularly resilient going in. In fact, sometimes the people that are the least resilient grow in the greatest possible way. So I will say that the challenge and the opportunity is to keep going, to learn from people who have spent their entire lives, all their blood, sweat, and tears, solving for the one problem that you're trying to solve for today. And there are people like that everywhere in the world. And you have to just do a little digging. But it's interesting. I would say that without question, my greatest purpose was hidden in my greatest pain and problems, for sure.
Yeah. And a great reminder to hear during this time, over the past couple of years of the pandemic, people have really lost probably a lot of their income. Some people lost their jobs. Some people are not able to physically be with their community. And so, I feel like happiness tended to be in a all-time low, but I also do see maybe the gift in the pandemic is recognizing, when the pandemic first hit, I remember it was March, and I went home from the hospital that one day, and I took a look at my retirement accounts and savings accounts and everything I had invested, everything just plummeted. And I remember feeling that shock of, what am I going to do? I mean, I had a brand new family. I had a bonus daughter at that time. I knew I was going to have a daughter on the way. I was like, what's going to happen? And I realized why I placed so much emphasis on this number, in the bank account. And the more I tried to sort of process through that experience, I was like, wow, maybe the gift is really understanding that happiness, that true success is something that will never be something I can attain from the outside. Recognizing that the true wealth and success and being able to tap into that happiness is something from within. And if you can feel that, no matter what's happening on the outside, no matter what number it is on your bank account, no matter if somebody's yelling at you on the freeway in Los Angeles, that you have access to that, that's the gift. And I truly believe that maybe this pandemic has been brought to us and people are starting to understand that a little bit more and more, that happiness is an inside game.
Oh, just so beautiful and so brilliant and so eloquently stated. I love that so much. I couldn't agree with you more about that. The thing about adversity always causes us to stop, slow down, and reprioritize what's truly important. Like, no question about it. That's one of the greatest gifts that comes from adversity. The other thing is it weeds out relationships that are weak or not the healthiest, and it strengthens the ones that are, right? So it's another way in which adversity benefits us. I would say the third piece is, to your point, part of that prioritization, it helps us, if we're paying attention, to gain deeper wisdom around, what our life is for, what's it about, where true happiness lies, and where it doesn't, right? And when in doubt, you can always lean into the science there as well, right? So most of us think we have a sort of intellectual understanding that, yeah, more money doesn't mean more happiness. But interestingly enough, most of us don't live that way, right? And all the science has found that, sure, if you make less than $75,000 a year, more money does mean more life satisfaction. But at some point, you begin to experience what we call the diminishing margin utility of the dollar. And so you get less and less happiness bang for your buck. And at some point, you actually plateau about maybe $125,000, on average. Also, we tend to think, well, okay, sure, money maybe doesn't get you as much happiness as you think it will, or maybe not at all at some point. Also, though, we tend to assume that, well, health does, though. For sure, health does. And no, all of us want to be healthy, no question about it. Interestingly enough, there's no direct correlation or strong correlation between happiness and health in the direction that we want it to be. So most of us think we've got to be healthy and then we can be happy. No, that relationship doesn't exist. No relationship there. But there is a relationship between subjective experience of health, so perception of health, and happiness, right? And so health doesn't lead to happiness. That being said, happiness does lead to health, boost your immune system, increases sort of healthy actions that you take around your life. And interestingly enough, happy people are actually a lot more responsible with respect to health, taking healthy behaviors and all that stuff. But yes, everything you're saying is exactly right. If you look for happiness in the world, you'll always be disappointed. And so if you look for it in money, and if you look for it even in relationships, although relationships are great, if you look for it in health, you won't find happiness is that inherent, innate, sort of thoughtless, wordless presence of peaceful aliveness that always exists within you and as you. It's always there. And so the real challenge and opportunity is just to tap into that, to notice and recognize and to feel into that peaceful aliveness in every moment, no matter what you're doing, no matter what you have, no matter what you don't have or who you're not with, right? And that's the challenge for most of us, is to recognize precisely what you said, which is that happiness is not in the world, it's in you. It's not in the past and the future. It's in the present. It's in presence itself.
That is so beautiful. And I think really recognizing that gives you that power to access really your true self. So what do you say to people right now who probably might be a little too distracted with social media, all the noise that's going on in the world today? What would be easy, tangible steps for people that are out there who might not have access to you as their personal coach to start cultivating that innate happiness and contentment within all of us?
Yeah. So I'd say there's sort of 4 big steps. Really, there's just one. If you want, you can skip to the end, but I'm going to give you all 4 because we'll start with the low-hanging fruit. So in the beginning, our happiness journey is mostly about happiness being happy activities or happy actions. And so you can do something as simple as create a list. We'll call them happiness islands. Happiness islands are those activities, places that for no good reason or for little reason tend to bring you a whole lot of happiness. You feel energized, inspired, alive, encouraged, energized as a result of participating in those activities or spending time in those places. You want to list those things out and you want to schedule more and more of those things in your life. Likewise, you want to identify your happiness deserts or happiness valleys. Those are things or places or activities that drain you of energy, right? That drain you of happiness. You feel less motivated. You feel less alive. You feel less inspired. You want to do everything you can to reverse engineer those things out of your life, right? So you want to outsource, delegate, reduce, eliminate, automate, or regulate all of those deserts or valleys, as many of them as you possibly can. That's step 1.
All right.
At some point in your life,
you mentioned places and activities. Would that also include people?
Yes, that's step 2.
Oh,
this is why you are. This is why you are what you are and who you are. I mean, I love it. Perfect segue. That's exactly right. So step 2 is getting crystal clear about the people that are your happiness islands and the people that are your happiness deserts. And sometimes you can't eliminate or get rid of a family member or friend. You still want to be in their life or whatnot, but you can certainly reduce the time, energy that you invest in that unhealthy or toxic relationship.
And then create some boundaries.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You nailed it. So that's exactly right. So that's sort of step 1 and step 2. So happiness being partly what we do, also partly who we spend time with, right? The people. And then you get to a third sort of step, which is all about happiness being a state of mind, right? And so that's really about telling a better feeling story based in truth about everything and everybody in your life, starting with yourself, right? So most of us bet thoughts just based on whether or not they're true, like exclusively based on whether or not they're true. You don't want to do that because there are lots of things that are true that you focusing on will not help you feel better, it'll be better. So instead, you want to focus or vet thoughts and entertain thoughts based on whether or not they're true and constructive. So that's the challenge. And I just describe all that and summarize that by saying, tell the better feeling story based in truth about everything and everybody in the world, including yourself.
Right. What I'm hearing there is a lot of times there's facts and meaning. And how you feel about something is really the meaning that you create. And we actually have the opportunity to create our new perspective and a new story for ourselves. And as we tell that new story, you can ask how that feels within you. And that is, you can create a new meaning, a new story to create better emotions in your own life.
Boom. That's exactly it, right? I mean, if it's raining, is it a bad day or are you looking forward to the sunshine, right? If it's like you have $0 in your bank account, are you broke or is there only up from here, right? So It's just telling a better feeling story precisely in the way you described, simply to feel better first and foremost. But when you feel better, you do better. You know, when you feel better, life goes better. And that's scientific, that's empirical. So yeah, and then there's the fourth step, and this is sort of the cheat code, the sort of master key, which is, you know, if we talked about the previous step as sort of positive thinking, we'll call it constructive thinking. The final step is really about not thinking. So if you pay attention, when you're most tapped in, tuned in, turned on to life, to yourself, to another person, when you're enjoying yourself deeply, truly, and blissfully, you'll notice that your mind is mostly quiet, right? When you're flow state. So flow state, we all know that, as a doctor, as an artist, as an athlete, as an entrepreneur, or as a business person, when you're in flow state, you're so consumed, absorbed, and engaged in what you're doing that you have very little time, interest, or energy to evaluate how you're doing, right? And so you're just loving it. You're enjoying it so much. But in that same state, you're also 500 to 1,000% more efficient, effective, and efficacious at whatever you happen to be doing, right? So flow state is one way to describe happiness. And in flow state, you're perfectly present and you're not living from the mind. You're living from a deeper place. We'll call it the heart, right? But yeah, the challenge is to recognize that happiness has something to do with what you do. Sure, do happy things. It has something to do with the people you spend time with. Spend time with happy people or loving people. It has a lot to do with the thoughts you think. Sure, think happy thoughts or positive thoughts as opposed to negative thoughts. But ultimately, happiness isn't a state of mind. It's not a state of mood. It's a state of being.
No, I hear that. And, a lot of people might ask, how do we do that? I can do the activities and put myself in places. That's an easy thing to do. I could surround myself with people that uplift me. Yes. And yes, I can practice my thoughts and start changing the narrative. I can do that. But how do I start to cultivate the being and just the understanding that deep within me is that space? What are people doing?
Yeah, so I'd say a number of ways. First is to just begin to notice more and more often when you're perfectly at peace or feeling pretty happy, how quiet your mind is, right? And a great time to do that is right before you fall asleep at night and right when you wake up in the morning, when you're so tired that you don't want to move your body. You're so tired, you've forgotten all your fears, all your hopes, all your dreams. You've forgotten the world. You've forgotten everybody in the world. You've forgotten yourself. And right before that micro moment, right before you slip off to sleep, there's just perfect bliss there. It's just that peaceful aliveness right there. It's such a sweet moment. Just recognizing that and then milking that moment a little, right? Now, you can expand that and practice that the rest of the day by practicing what I'd call a micromeditation. A micromeditation is just one breath. So most of us really struggle with meditation. It's like an hour is too long, 30 minutes is too long, sometimes 30 seconds is too long, but one breath, we can all do one breath. Mm-hmm. So the idea is to, as frequently as humanly possible, as consistently as you can remember throughout the day, pretend like it's the last moment you have on this planet. Pretend like it's the last moment you'll ever get in this body, and be sincere about it, and try to milk and juice that one breath for as much joy as humanly possible. And the best way to do it, the easiest way to do it, is just to let your thoughts go for a moment. You can keep doing whatever it is you're doing, if you're swiftering, waiting in line, in conversation. But you breathe from the stomach, from the diaphragm, you let all your thoughts go, and you try to enjoy that one breath, that one moment, like you've never enjoyed a breath or a moment before. If you could do that multiple times a day, just for the joy of it alone, you'll get really good at it. If you try to get good at it, you'll never get good at it. So you have to prioritize enjoying it. But if you do it for about 22 to 66 days, you'll begin to rewire your brain to do it automatically and effortlessly.
That is so great. And that is so, what's so great about it is it's so simple. And it only really requires a second. And that brings together sort of like intentionality and that focus of where you want to be. And the key word there is enjoy. And I remember I was just doing it as you were describing it. I was like, wow, you know what? If this was my last moment on earth, being in front of this stylish, really happy guy, I'm me.
I'm gonna have to Venmo you. I promise. PayPal you something, man. I just so appreciate that. But you nailed it. You're absolutely right about that. And what's sad is that often most of us overlook the simple things. The really simple things. They seem too simple. The ego likes it really complex and sophisticated and difficult. But it's the simple things that are always most powerful. It's the simple things that are always most profound. Simple is powerful and profound.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, if you guys just took anything away, I mean, this conversation has been amazing, but if you just take away that one simple skill of that micromeditation that Rob talked about, your life will change. Rob, I really want to thank you for your time today. And if people want to get to know more about you, want to hire you as a coach, how do they find you?
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. It's genuinely a highlight for me of the week, of the month. Really, it is. Every time I connect with you at all, truly. But this especially. So you can find me, anyone can find me at my website at coachrobmack.com. You can find my book, first one, Happiness from the Inside Out. And you can find the next book, which will be out this summer, Love from the Inside Out, everywhere great books are found, including Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And of course, you can find me on all social media platforms at Rob Mack Official.
Oh, that's beautiful. And Rob, I always close our conversation with the question, what has been your best medicine?
Happiness. Happiness has been the best medicine. Yes, it just has been. I mean, it's, the beautiful thing about it for me is that because I like to think so much, because I analyze so much, it's easy for me to get wrapped and caught up in outcomes and results, even physical ones, right? I've had all kinds of things in my body that I haven't particularly loved, and lots of undiagnosed, challenges over the years. And it's so fascinating to me that on so many occasions, I do all the right things, of course, and wasn't always lucky to have a doctor such as yourself that was, so skilled, but I great doctors, right? But we couldn't often find out what was going on, what was going wrong. And I'd eventually come to a place and say, I just want to be happy. Can I just commit to being happy? I'm going to do what I can about my health, but I'm just going to focus on the happy. And then, it's like a month goes by, 2 months goes by, sometimes 6 months goes by, and it's like, man, the body's better, and my finances are better, and my relationships are better. And it's like all of a sudden, life seems to cooperate and collaborate with you in a way that it never seemed to do so beforehand. And it came by you actually finally relaxing. It's ironic. It sounds so counterintuitive, but without question, for me, happiness is the greatest medicine.
Rob Mack, thank you so much for joining us. I hope to do this again when your book is about to launch, because we want to send it all your way. It's such important work that you do. I appreciate you, brother, and thank you for being on the Thrive State podcast.
The pleasure and privilege is all mine. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Thrive State podcast. And if this podcast is bringing a lot of value to you, if you find that your life is just improving with this podcast, that your life is getting to the next level, please consider supporting it. And here's a few ways you can do so. You can do so by liking this video and commenting on this video, and also sharing this video with your friends and family. Another thing you can do is go to ratethispodcast.com/ThriveState. Go ahead and leave us a 5-star review there. It will really, really help this show grow. And this will give me more time so that I could actually give more content to you, just like you got in this episode. And if you haven't already picked up a copy of my book, Thrive State, Your Blueprint for Optimal Health, Longevity, and Peak Performance, you can pick it up now. It became a #1 new release in longevity. Go to thrivestatebook.com. And if you enjoy the book, please consider leaving us a review as well. And the last thing you can do, if you're liking everything here and you want to work more closely with me as well as my team to get you into the Thrive State, go to kienvu.com/accelerator and consider joining the home course, the Thrive State Accelerator. It's really the course that I use. It's the concepts that I use personally when I work with CEOs, celebrities, and my high-profile clients to get them to the Thrive State. Again, the Thrive State Accelerator at kienvu.com/accelerator. And because you're a listener of this podcast, I want you to save 25% by using the coupon code podcast25. I hope we continue to give value to you. And remember always, you are your best medicine.